Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Action Comics issue 1088 by Mark Waid, Skylar Partridge and Ivan Placencia. Superboy's origin continues this issue as the recently new editor of the Daily Planet, Perry White, wants the story on the new superpowered teen who showed up in town recently, having his reporter Elliot try to come up with a name for the kid. The writer can't quite pin down a name that perfectly encapsulates what this boy can do. Perry remembers another reporter, Charlie Lane, who brought his niece to work one day recently and she actually came up with a great name for him, so Perry decides to go with the kid's name, officially calling the caped teen Superboy. This is a really awesome opening and it just adds a little piece of lore to Superman. You know, I don't think or at least I cannot remember if any story before this one, any origin story for Superboy, Lois is directly involved in it, because usually it goes, you know, it's Lana, Laurie Lamaris, like all those characters before he meets Lois in Metropolis when he becomes Superman. So I kind of like that they added this little bit here with Lois indirectly naming him Superboy. It keeps that sort of through line going where she'll eventually name him as an adult as Superman once she begins working for the paper, and I think it's a lovely little bit of lore just building out the characters there a little bit. Waid writes it almost like it's kind of like a fate sort of thing between these two characters where Lois and Clark were meant to be meeting and, you know, already their lives are interacting even when they don't know it. Clark, Ma and Pa all see the headlines, actually liking the name Superboy. Clark's molding of his secret identity continues, with the papers thinking that he's actually from Metropolis, something they need the papers not being really too sure of, so they have to keep working on where Superboy appears, comes from, and where he disappears from. To sort this out, the Kents decide that Clark can spend 2 afternoons a week flying around the country getting some practice and saving people, as long as he's done his chores and he does it away from Smallville. Clark jumps at the chance, and after all his chores are done, he goes off all over the US, helping people in Gotham, Los Angeles, Central City, and everywhere in between. I'm loving all of the thought being put into setting up Clark as a hero. It's not just, oh, he is going to dress differently than he does as Superman, he's going to wear the glasses, which, you know, depending on which canon, you know, there's the hypno glasses, the glasses with the Kryptonian lenses that kind of change the shade of eyes and hide his face. All these like little things that Mark Waid is doing here that I don't think a lot of writers really do all that much. They just worry about like what he looks like. They're not building out all of this other stuff like here where he has to do all of these saves away from Smallville, so no one suspects that, oh, Superboy's saving a lot of people in Smallville, maybe he is from Smallville. There is also the idea where Clark doesn't know where everything is, like he doesn't know which direction to fly in and whatnot. He's kind of got to use a map to find out which way to go to get to Los Angeles from Kansas, or all the way up to New York or something like that. He doesn't just know, and I like that that's also building on the idea that when he eventually becomes Superman, he has that experience where like he knows which way to fly, you know, how high to fly to get over to here really quickly, all that sort of stuff that you never really think of, but because Mark Waid is such a super nerd about that sort of stuff, he thought about that and decided to put that in a comic. Clark also begins finding his footing as a real hero, but his powers are still developing, so he's without his heat vision, and while he technically is bulletproof, it still bruises and actually hurts him, almost like a paintball hit. Soon his flying around has to stop as high school is about to begin, something he doesn't want to do, but Ma and Pa convince him to do it. Before he leaves for his first day, Martha gives him a pair of her old glasses to help change the shape of his face and his eyes a little bit more. This is the explanation of the glasses I've always liked. They're not, you know, hypno glasses, or, you know, they've got the Kryptonian glass from the crystals that, you know, change the shape of his eyes and color of his eyes. They're just simple glasses that change the shape of your face, and as someone who wears glasses, you would actually be surprised at how much they actually do change your face both on and off. Clark heads to Smallville High, the freshly renovated school building that now serves 3 local counties, meaning there's a lot of kids in the school this year. Clark soon finds himself rather invisible to many of the people in the school, apart from his old friend Pete Ross, who he shares a few classes with. Unfortunately, Clark's new glasses garner the attention of a bully who picks on Clark, sparking a moment of anger from him. Although instead of dropping the bully in a volcano like he imagines, Clark feigns weakness, not wanting the kid to punch him and break his glasses. However, he knows that if the kid was to punch him, he would shatter his fist. After the bully leaves Clark alone, at least for now, he sets up his locker, eager to see Lana since she'd been traveling with her family during the summer and he never got a chance to see her. He does remember that Ma told him that she saw Lana at the store the other day, warning Clark that she has changed quite a fair bit, and Clark soon learns that his mother was right as he catches a glimpse of the now older Lana, his grip tightening on the locker, so much so it crushes the door, but he's able to put it back before anyone notices. This is a great little moment for Clark as he suddenly realizes, this friend he grew up with, this girl who we get a little bit of a photo montage of like them growing up, and we see that Lana was very much a tomboy, which she is. That's like one of her characteristics. She's very much not a girl's girl, and I like that that's what Clark sees her as, sees her as this person. So being now on the other side of that, where now he's starting to develop feelings for her as he's in those formative years as a teenager, where hormones and stuff like that are rushing. So he doesn't know how to really deal with this, and we see him crush the locker. It's a very, very funny little bit, and it's stuff like that we'd see all the time in Smallville as well, where he acted like a clown in front of Lana because he has a crush on her. Also, she had a kryptonite necklace. But we'd see like stuff like this all the time in that show, and I like that Mark Waid is injecting a little bit of that into this book here. Clark can't believe how much she has changed from the tomboyish girl he knew as a child, so much so that he is not able to even actually say anything to her, and when she says hello to him, all he can do is just make a noise with his mouth. Clark begins his next class and Lana is in it, however he's not able to get a look at her since she is sitting behind him, being the class is sitting alphabetically. On top of that, he finds that the new world history teacher, Mr. Blake, has taken an interest in him, literally staring a hole right through Clark's head for some reason. I like this introduction to the school here, since I imagine we're going to spend a few issues at this point in Superboy's life before he moves on from high school. So we got to have this little cast of characters, and again, probably going to mention Smallville a lot during this run of this book because it's very comparable to that. And just like how that show had regular teachers mixed in with some special one-off characters who'd appear for Clark to face off against, I like we're sort of developing a cast of characters we don't really see a lot of, so like Pete Ross, Lana Lang, all getting involved in the actual story, mixed in with new characters like Mr. Blake and some other teachers we meet a little later on in the issue. Clark meets more of his teachers, like Mr. Mosher, the chemistry teacher who loves to show off a little bit in the science lab, but maybe a bit too much, as during one demonstration, he knocks over a chemical that sets fire to the entire room. Chaos breaks out in the school as people rush to the exit, but Clark spots Mr. Mosher, Pete, and some other students trapped by the fire. He rushes to the bathroom to change, and as Superboy flies across Smallville to the town's water tower, ripping the top open and carrying the heavy tower over to the school, dumping it onto the now flame-engulfed building. There's a neat little bit here, and only Mark Waid would think of this, where Clark is, ripping the tower off the building and everything, and he's worried about the damage he's done to the tower. He plans on fixing it up later, he's gonna like mold it back into place and everything, and even refilling the tank with fresh, clear glacier water, just so the town isn't without any water. Just a neat little thing that even as a kid he was thinking about how to make things right, even small things like this. During the rescue, Clark notices that the fire sprinklers didn't set off, so he rummages through the school's office files and he pays a visit to the contractor, smashing the man's door in as he is on the phone talking about how he cut corners on the construction of the school, but they'll just blame it on the school themselves so they can claim insurance money. Superboy confronts the man, knowing that he and his company were set to build the school's sprinkler system, and he took the school's money but didn't bother finishing the job, as Clark found all of the unused equipment stuffed into the roof accesses of the school building. Ben doesn't really care since Superboy can't prove he did anything, and he already has done damage to his office, so Superboy better get a good lawyer. This guy is like cartoonishly evil, and I really love it. It kind of reminds me of, old school, golden age, 1930s champion of the oppressed stuff that Superman would deal with on a daily basis, crooked landlords and people like this, like building contractors who skipped corners on buildings and had endangered people's lives. Very street level quote unquote stuff for Superman to deal with, and again, this is like the perfect thing for someone like Superboy to deal with. He's not immediately thrust into dealing with Mongol or Darkseid has come to town or something like that. He's just dealing with everyday crooks that the police would usually deal with. Clark, in a fit of anger, smashes the man's desk apart, his eyes glowing red as he tells the man that there were kids and innocent people in that building when it caught fire. He grabs the man, fully intending on hitting him, but Clark snaps out of his anger, dropping the man and smashing out of the building. As the man's assistant comes to check in on him, Superboy comes back, apologizing to him for what he did to his office and to him, but he's quick to remind the man that what he did was criminal, so he told the fire department what the man did, providing evidence to them. Clark learning this lesson early, and in this way I think is much more effective than some big mistake or some big event happening when Clark Clark's emotions get better of him. I like that it's paired back to this guy putting innocence in danger, and people Clark knows personally in danger as well. It's close to home, and that's why you understand why he got angry as he did, because the people he cares about, the people who are his friends alongside just everyday innocents, were in danger. And because he's still a child, he's still trying to figure out those emotions. We also get him learning things that he learned from the Kents, be a good person, rules and stuff like that, and he knows not to break those rules, even though he kind of did break the one rule his parents set in motion for him here, where it wasn't to just apprehend bad guys. He had to save people and just deal with that and leave the cops deal with everything else. So he kind of broke that here, but he understands that Clark heads home and tells his parents about what happened, and Jonathan isn't too pleased that he did that, since he's only meant to apprehend bad guys, not punish them, something Clark knows full well, and he hates the idea that this guy could just use lawyers to worm his way out of this problem. Jonathan, however, has an interesting take on it, since he knows that if the guy does that, the man has ruined the company his grandfather built right there in Smallville, something the town won't ever forget, and they'll run him out of business. There is a knock at the door, and Jonathan goes to answer, finding Mr. Blake, Clark's new history teacher. Kents introduce themselves to the teacher, but he is rather blunt, saying he's not there for them, he's there to talk with Superboy, knowing full well that Clark is the hero. This is a great little cliffhanger to end on, and I guess the teacher is that powered guy we saw in the first issue of the series, where he comes to confront Superboy for some reason, but what we saw in that first little tease, he seemed quite angry about Superboy doing this, and whether this guy turns out to be another Kryptonian, Daxamite, or any of the in-betweens, I'm really intrigued to see what it is, because it totally feels like an episode of Smallville. So many of Clark's teachers in that show ended up with superpowered, ended up becoming the freak of the week or something like that, or in some cases one of his teachers was actually Brainiac. So I'd love to see Wade sort of borrows things from that show and kind of have a bit more of an influence on it. Not saying that it already doesn't, it has a huge influence on this book so far. The Smallville influences are many, so I'm intrigued to see what Wade is going to do with this new character of Blake. Action Comics issue 1088 was another great installment in Superboy's origins from Mark Waid and Skylar Partridge. I thoroughly enjoyed Clark getting to learn a lesson about his anger and how to control it even when his friends are in danger. It's a great lesson for Superboy to learn very early on. I like also the stuff that Wade went into in the logistics of Superman and how he works as a Superboy, and how it's not just he donned the costume and that was that. There's training involved. He has to learn directions and where to go and where to be and where not to be. All these little things that I think no one else but Mark Waid would actually put time into thinking of, because Mark Waid's a giant fucking nerd like me, so of course he would think about stuff like that. I'm intrigued to see who this Mr. Blake is, running around Clark's school and seemingly knowing that he's Superboy. Again, as I said, the influences that Smallville has had on this series are plentiful, and I'm sure he's going to be revealed to be someone familiar, and I can't wait to see who he is. I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10.